Thomas Stephenson loved his family more than anything. And then right after them, he loved the Air Force and his golf game. So how did a man with such a rigid routine disappear into thin air? And how does a case that's almost 30 years old have no leads, no suspects, and no answers? Let's break it down and see if we can figure it out. I'm Melissa Compton, and this is Crimealytics. Thomas Stephenson was born on January the 4th of 1940 in Green Hill, Arkansas, to Walter and Sarah Stephenson. Now, he was the youngest of 12 siblings. He had 4 older brothers and 7 older sisters. He was a loving husband, father, grandfather. He was the grandson of a preacher, and he was a decorated Air Force veteran. He joined the military in 1957 when he was just 17 years old, and he stayed in the military till he retired 30 years later. And when he retired, he had achieved the rank of Chief Master Sergeant, which was the Air Force's highest enlisted rank. During his military service, he served in 5 countries and 8 states and was awarded 11 medals, including the Bronze Star, the Meritorious Service Medal, 4 Oak Leaf Cluster, and the Air Force Commendation Award. About a year after he retired, Thomas wanted to go back to work, so he started working as a civilian employee at the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. And there he also worked his way up through the ranks to where he was the Deputy Supply Chief, which made him second in command of the Supply Squadron of the 355th Tactical Fighter Wing. Just like with any other servicemen and women, decades of military service created a life of routine for Thomas even when he was out of the military. His friends and neighbors said you could set a clock by him. At 6 o'clock every weekday morning, his garage door would open as he left for work. And then at 4:30 in the afternoon, it would open again as he returned home. And this discipline spilled over into his personal life as well. His closet was laid out in such a way that all of his shirts were together. If they were black, they were all together. If they were white, they were all together. If they were patterned, they were all together. And then his sock drawer was the same way. He had 3 different sock drawers, one for white, one for blue, and one for black. And neighbors said he even mowed the lawn in clothes that were starched and pressed. So this life of routine from the military transferred over, and everything had a sense of organization and timing for Thomas. And this even included his golf game. He would play golf with his friends at the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base every single Sunday. And then when he came home from that golf game, he would change his clothes and have a snack of popcorn and soda. I come from a family that is full of military veterans, and I know firsthand that they can get so used to this regimen and this methodical timing that everything has to be done that it can carry over and change their personality to where they want things done their way, and it has to be done a certain way. And it's not that they're bad people, that's just the way that they are conditioned. And that didn't happen with Thomas. Everyone said his personality never changed because of that. He was well liked, respected as a supervisor, as a friend, as a colleague, and he took really good care of employees and airmen. He didn't have any enemies, and everyone who met and knew him, they liked him. They said he was kind and compassionate. He was just all around a great guy. They also said Thomas would not break his routine. So his strict regimen and his not having any enemies and everyone loving him made what happened to him all the more baffling to family, friends, and police. And as we break this case down, it's going to be probably as confusing to you as it is to me because something has been missed. Thomas Stephenson went missing on August the 16th of 1998 at the age of 58, and he was last seen leaving the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base where he had played golf with friends until about 11:30 in the morning. His wife of almost 30 years, Suzanne, was on a trip with her friend in Phoenix, and she called Thomas to let him know what time she would be home on Monday. but Thomas didn't answer. So she initially didn't think anything about it, and she called him a couple more times, but she still received no answer. So she decided to try one more time at about 9 o'clock in the evening, which was 30 minutes past his bedtime, to see if he would answer, but there was still no answer, so she started to worry. So she tried to convince herself that maybe he was in the shower, he was working in the yard, or something else was going on that kept him from answering the phone, but she also knew that that wasn't like him at all. The next morning, while she was still in Phoenix, Suzanne received a call from Thomas's secretary saying he hadn't shown up for work. And right then, she knew something was wrong, as did his colleagues. They said for him not to come to work at all, that was something that just did not happen. And one coworker even said that when he would get to work, Thomas's car was always in the parking lot. And on this Monday morning, he had arrived to work about 30 minutes before his shift, and Thomas's car wasn't there, so he immediately knew something wasn't right.
Every day I come in, his car would be there before mine, and I get here a half an hour before work, and it wasn't there Monday. I thought it odd right then.
While Mrs. Stephenson was still out of town, Thomas's colleagues decided to go over to his house and check on him. Maybe he had gotten sick, maybe something had happened, but they wanted to see if he was okay.
The front door was locked. They did not see his vehicle there. They went around back and found out that the sliding glass door was unlocked. They opened that door, they went inside. They didn't notice anything really out of the ordinary, didn't look like any signs of a struggle.
But his car, which was a 1985 dark brown Nissan 300ZX, was not there. Of course, the door was unlocked, so there was no forced entry. There were no signs of a struggle or anything like that. So they decided to call the police department and let Miss Stephenson know that they had reported Thomas missing. When police got to the scene, even though they didn't see any signs of a struggle, the door wasn't kicked in, it was actually unlocked, and, things didn't look out of sorts, his car was missing, he hadn't shown up from work, his wife hadn't heard from him, so they immediately suspected foul play. Suzanne returned home from her trip on Monday, and as she's looking around the house, there's some things that look weird to her. Now, these are things the colleagues wouldn't have noticed because they don't live there every day. Suzanne does. But the comforter off of their bed was missing. His eyeglasses were still in the bedroom, and his car was not in the garage. And this set off huge red flags for Suzanne because she knew he didn't leave the house alone. He couldn't have. The glasses that were in the bedroom were prescription glasses, and he could not see to walk across the room without running into walls, let alone drive off on his own without his glasses. Because there was no signs of forced entry or a struggle, Mrs. Stephenson was convinced that whoever was involved was someone that knew Thomas personally, because she said Thomas would never let a complete stranger into their house under any circumstances. Over the course of the next few days, investigators get confused. I'm confused. You're probably going to get confused because some strange things happen that just do not make sense. For example, the family received a call from someone demanding $20,000 and Thomas's glasses. Well, that could be a ransom demand, but here's the kicker. They did not tell anyone where to take these items, and they didn't tell them what would happen if they didn't comply. So I guess it was just like, we want $20,000 and Thomas's glasses. Click. Okay. You're either dealing with somebody that is not very bright or that is trying to taunt the family, throw the police off their scent or something, or probably a combination of both. And then someone tried to use Thomas's ATM cards at 2 different locations to make cash withdrawals. The first attempt was the very day he went missing. Someone heavily disguised tried to withdraw money from the Bank One walk-up ATM at West River Road and North Campbell Avenue. The second attempt was the very next day, and someone who had a cloth or a rag of some kind wrapped around their face tried to make a withdrawal from a drive-up Bank One ATM cash machine at Indian School Road and 33rd Street in Phoenix. They were not able to get cash from either ATM machine because they didn't have the right PIN number. So one could say that maybe they wanted Thomas's eyeglasses because he couldn't see to put his number into the ATM machine, or who knows, but this is just stranger than fiction, and it just keeps getting weirder. On August the 18th of 1998, just 2 days after he went missing, Thomas's 1985 300ZX was towed to the Jim Click Nissan dealership, which was located in Tucson at 850 West Auto Mall Drive. Now, police said that a man called, said the car wasn't running right, asked for it to be towed, and then said that he would pick it up later. They didn't know who called for the tow, and they still don't know today. On Saturday, August the 22nd of 1998, this is almost a week after Thomas disappeared, it was around 2 o'clock in the afternoon when one of the dealership's employees noticed a very strong pungent smell, and he traced it back to a car that was parked behind the body shop. And that car was Thomas's 1985 Nissan 300ZX. The employee looked in the back window of the car and he saw a leg sticking out underneath a blanket and a sunshade, so he immediately called the police. And police found the body of a man wrapped in a comforter and tied with a nylon strap. Now, if we remember when Mrs. Stephenson came home on that Monday, she said the comforter was missing off of their bed. And while police had their suspicions that the body was Thomas Stephenson's because the car belonged to him, the victim could not be identified because of the state of decomposition. Even though the car showed no signs of forced entry, there was no damage, and they couldn't tell a whole lot because of the decomposition of the body, police did confirm that whatever happened inside that vehicle was in fact a homicide. And a secretion was found on a nylon strap, and it was sent to the crime lab for testing. But just like the body, it was too deteriorated to find any DNA evidence. Now, keep in mind, this is in Tucson, Arizona, in the dead of summer, and according to Weather Underground, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on that date, it was 92 degrees, so it's no wonder the body was decomposed and there was no DNA able to be extracted from the nylon strap. It was just too hot and it had sat there too long. On Monday, August 24th of 1998, investigators spent most of the day trying to figure out and find out who called for that tow. And it could have been the killer. It could have been somebody who knew something about what had happened. But they had no information on that person. And this is where I have some questions, and you might too. Why did they not have information on that person? I know this was 1998. But back then or even today, who is going to tow a car with no information about who owns it, who's going to pay the bill for the tow, or who is responsible for that vehicle? That is something that really sticks out to me. Why was there no information gathered on who had the car towed? Because that would have been a big clue, and the case could have been solved by now. On August the 26th of 1998, the body that was in the back of the Nissan 300ZX was positively identified through dental records to be Thomas Stephenson, and the coroner concluded that the cause of death was homicide by strangulation. And they also found something else that was interesting. They found popcorn in Thomas's stomach, which confirmed, based on his strict regimen and the way he did things, that he had in fact made it home from that golf game on that Sunday afternoon. Investigators, family, friends, me, and maybe even you are absolutely baffled at this point. You have Thomas Stephenson, who is an average everyday guy. He goes to play golf, comes home, disappears, and then his car is towed to a service center where it sits for days with his body in the back, and we have nothing. And investigators don't believe it was a random killing. They believe he was targeted, but they still don't know why. A detective working the case said that most homicides in Tucson are gang-related, drug-related, or acts of passion, so a random murder would be highly unusual. They considered robbery as a motive, but valuables were left untouched and not taken in Suzanne and Thomas's Rita Ranch home. And investigators then spent hours interviewing family and friends and following up on leads, but no suspects have ever been named. They could not find one person who didn't like him, much less anyone who wanted him dead. There was a rumor that 3 men had talked to Thomas while he was on the golf course, but police were never able to substantiate that claim, so nothing ever came from it. And then friends and family spent hours upon hours distributing missing person flyers to grocery stores, department stores, hotels, libraries, everywhere that would let them, to try to get information on what happened to Thomas. But their efforts didn't give any new leads or evidence. His wife Suzanne said, and I quote, "I don't know who could do such a thing. Everybody loved him." And she decided to bury him in Green Hill, Arkansas, his hometown, after a full military funeral service. And before he was laid to rest, she did something that I don't think I would have the strength to do. And I think it was probably one of the kindest things that I have ever heard of that has been done. She had him cremated and took him back to their home. And she said that he didn't deserve to leave their home the way he did. He deserved to go through the front door with her. So she took his remains home and she walked out the front door with them. Then she took him to the cemetery to be buried. I mean, I would not have the strength to do that. So that is just awesome and shows how much she truly loved him. Several of Thomas's siblings have passed away without knowing what happened to their brother. And his sister Nina said, just like everyone else, they don't understand who would do this. He was the least likely person that this would happen to. But they all agree that it would have taken more than one person to subdue and move him. And we know that there were 2 attempts to use his card at the ATM. Was it 2 different people? Well, we really can't tell because of how they were disguised, but police could be looking for 2 suspects versus 1. His family hopes he wasn't looking into the eyes of a person that he knew.
We hope beyond hope that he was not looking into the face of someone he knew, or God forbid, into the eyes of someone he loved.
But based on the evidence that we see, and you guys tell me what you think in the comments, chances are he was looking right at someone that he knew and he trusted and he loved, and they betrayed him. Thomas's surviving family members are starting to lose hope that his case will be solved in their lifetime, but they're still determined to figure it out.
We still have faith that we will someday find out who did this evil thing, and that his daughter will someday have peace in her life.
And that's where you can come in and you can help. If you have any information on the disappearance of Thomas Stephenson, please call the Tucson Police Department at 520-791-4444, and I will bring you any updates to this case as they become available. And that's our case for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you receive any updates or new cases as they are released. Connect with me on social media at Crimealytics, and hop on out to my website, crimealytics.com, for more true crime cases or to submit a case suggestion. And listen to the podcast on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe out there.